Ambassador Krickstall's 6 arms trembled as he read the emergency message for the 3rd time. The holographic display flickered with urgent red symbols that made his large black eyes water. Around him, the council chamber of the Galactic Federation buzzed with nervous energy as hundreds of alien representatives whispered in dozens of different languages. The message was simple but terrifying. Zephyrian Colony World, Kepler. 442b under attack by unknown hostile force. Conventional defenses failing. Request immediate military assistance. Situation desperate. Krickstall, a tall insectoid being from the peaceful Mantari species, had served as Federation ambassador for over 200 years. In all that time, he had never seen such panic in the council chamber. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most advanced civilizations, with technology that could level mountains and energy shields that could protect entire planets. If they were asking for help, things were truly dire. Order! Order! Called Supreme Chancellor Vexera, her crystalline form glowing bright blue as she tried to calm the chaos. The Tritonian leader's voice echoed through the chamber with harmonic frequencies that naturally commanded attention. We must respond to this crisis with unity and wisdom. The first to speak was General Thakmor of the Ursinian Empire. The massive bear-like creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, his brown fur marked with the battle scars of countless conflicts. His people were known as the galaxy's premier warriors, feared across 1,000 worlds. My fleets can be there in 6 standard days, Thakmor growled, his voice like rolling thunder. The Ursinian 3rd Battle Fleet has never known defeat. Give me permission to deploy, and we'll crush these attackers. Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber. The Ursinians had the most powerful military in the Federation, with ships the size of small moons and weapons that could crack planets. If anyone could help the Zephyrians, it would be them. But before Chancellor Vexera could respond, another message arrived. This one came directly from the Zephyrian Defense Force, and the words made everyone's blood run cold. Ursinian fleet would be insufficient. Enemy force estimated at over 10,000 vessels of unknown design. Our best calculations suggest they possess technology beyond current Federation standards. Conventional military response may only result in more casualties. The chamber fell silent. If the Ursinian fleet wasn't enough, what could possibly stop this threat? General Thakmor's face darkened, his pride clearly wounded, but even he couldn't argue with the Zephyrian assessment. They were logical beings who never exaggerated threats. What about the Nexari Collective? Suggested Counselor Zimwade, a tentacled being whose people controlled the galaxy's most sophisticated artificial intelligence networks. Our quantum computers could analyze the enemy's weaknesses and coordinate a multi-species defense. Already tried, came another update from the battlefield. Enemy appears to adapt to our strategies in real time. Conventional tactical approaches proving ineffective. More suggestions flew around the chamber. The Etherian Enclave offered their psychic warriors, beings who could manipulate matter with their minds. The Silicon Confederacy proposed sending their massive automated defense drones. The Void Walkers suggested using their dimensional technology to attack from parallel space. Each offer was met with the same response from Kepler, 442b. Insufficient, too slow, or already attempted without success. The enemy force was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They seemed to have counters for every known military doctrine and technology. As the hours passed and the situation grew more desperate, an uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. The greatest military minds in the galaxy were stumped. Civilizations that had conquered entire star systems were admitting defeat before the battle had even begun. Then, in the back corner of the chamber, a small voice spoke up. It was barely above a whisper, coming from the newest member of the Federation. The speaker was Ambassador Sarah Chun, representing a species that had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. What about sending humans? The suggestion was so unexpected that many delegates thought they had misheard. Ambassador Chun was tiny compared to most Federation representatives, barely reaching the waist of the average Ursinian. Her species, Homo sapiens from the small blue world called Earth, were considered primitive by galactic standards. They had only recently developed faster-than-light travel, and their weapons technology was centuries behind the Federation average. General Throckmore actually laughed, a sound like boulders tumbling down a mountain. With respect, Ambassador Chun, your people are still using chemical propulsion for some of their spacecraft. How could they possibly help against an enemy that has defeated our most advanced forces? Sarah Chun stood up straighter, her brown eyes flashing with determination. She was small, but something in her expression made several nearby delegates take a step back. General, you're thinking about this all wrong. You're trying to fight these attackers with conventional military tactics. But humans don't do conventional. What do you mean? Asked Chancellor Vexera, her crystalline form shifting to a curious purple color. Every species here has developed along logical lines. Your military evolution followed predictable patterns based on physics, mathematics, and strategic doctrine. You build bigger weapons, stronger shields, faster ships. It's all very sensible. Sarah paused, looking around the chamber. Humans aren't sensible. The delegates exchanged confused glances. Was this tiny creature actually suggesting that military logic was somehow an advantage? Our history is full of impossible victories, Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. We've won battles we had no right to win, survived situations that should have killed us all, and found solutions to problems that our own computers said were unsolvable. We don't just think outside the box. Most of the time, we don't even know there's a box. Ambassador Crickstall's mandibles clicked nervously. But, Ambassador Chun, your military force is minimal compared to what's needed here. The Zephyrians say they're facing 10,000 enemy ships. Numbers don't tell the whole story, Sarah replied. Has anyone actually asked the Zephyrians what these attackers are doing? What their actual tactics are? This question caught everyone off guard. In all the panic and strategic discussions, no one had bothered to get detailed intelligence about the enemy's methods. They had simply assumed that overwhelming force was the answer. Chancellor Vexera quickly established a direct communication link with the Zephyrian Command Center. The image that appeared showed Commander Zeldaz, a tall, gray-skinned being whose usually calm demeanor was clearly strained. Commander, the Chancellor said, we need detailed information about the enemy's tactics and behavior. Zeldaz's large eyes widened with what might have been surprise. Their tactics? Chancellor, that's just it. They don't seem to have any. They're not following any known military doctrine. They attack in seemingly random patterns. Their formations make no strategic sense, and they appear to be using their ships in ways that violate basic physics. What do you mean? Asked General Throckmore. They're ramming our stations with ships that should crumple on impact, but somehow they're cutting right through our defensive barriers. They're broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't exist. Some of their vessels appear to be held together with what our scanners identify as adhesive compounds. Sarah Chun leaned forward, suddenly very interested. Commander, are you saying these attackers are improvising? Yes, that would be an accurate description. They seem to be making up their strategies as they go along. It's completely unpredictable and somehow incredibly effective. A slow smile spread across Sarah's face. Oh, they have no idea what they've gotten themselves into. The other delegates looked at her with confusion and growing concern. General Throckmore's voice carried a note of warning. Ambassador Chun, what exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that we send a human fleet to Kepler 442b. Not because we have the biggest guns or the strongest shields, but because we're the only species in this room that can out-crazy a bunch of improvising lunatics. The chamber erupted in protests and arguments. The idea was absurd, impossible, potentially suicidal. Humans had never been involved in a major galactic conflict. Their largest warship was smaller than a Zephyrian patrol boat. They were completely outclassed in every measurable way. But Commander Zeldaz's voice cut through the noise. Wait, Ambassador Chun, your species is experienced with unconventional warfare. Oh, Commander, Sarah said, her smile growing wider. You have no idea. We've been fighting impossible odds since we first picked up sticks and decided to hunt animals 10 times our size. We've survived ice ages, plagues, meteor impacts, and each other. We've built cities in deserts, farming communities in frozen wastelands, and underwater research stations in crushing ocean depths. She gestured to the holographic display showing the battle at Kepler 442b. But more importantly, we've been dealing with unpredictable, improvising enemies our entire history. Pirates, rebels, terrorists, madmen, beings who don't follow the rules and can't be defeated with conventional tactics. We've learned to think like them, to be even more unpredictable than they are. The chamber fell quiet as the delegates processed this information. It was true that most galactic civilizations had developed along relatively peaceful lines, with conflicts being settled through negotiation, technology, or overwhelming force. The concept of asymmetric warfare, of victory through chaos and unpredictability, was foreign to most of them. Even if that's true, said Counselor Zimwade, the human fleet would take weeks to reach Kepler 442b. The Zephyrian colony could be completely destroyed by then. Sarah shook her head. Not if we use the Federation's emergency jump gate network. Our ships are small enough to fit through the gates designed for supply runs. We could have a force there in 18 hours. What kind of force? Asked General Throckmore skeptically. 12 ships, mixed class, some military, some civilian vessels that we can convert quickly. About 300 personnel total. The laughter that erupted from General Throckmore shook the chamber walls. 300 humans against 10,000 enemy ships? Ambassador Chun, that's not strategy, that's suicide. But Sarah Chin's expression didn't waver. If anything, her smile became even more confident. General, you're still thinking conventionally. You're imagining a traditional battle where ships line up and shoot at each other until one side is destroyed. That's not how humans fight when we're outnumbered. Then, how do humans fight? Asked Chancellor Vexera. Dirty, Sarah replied without hesitation. We fight dirty, and we fight smart, and we never, ever fight fair. We'll use their improvisation against them. We'll be so unpredictable that even they won't know what we're going to do next. Commander Zeldaz's image flickered as another explosion rocked the Zephyrian Command Center. Chancellor, we're losing ground rapidly. If the human fleet has even a small chance of success, we need to try something. Our conventional defenses will fail within 48 hours. The weight of the decision pressed down on the chamber. The most powerful military forces in the galaxy had been deemed insufficient. Sending a tiny human fleet seemed like sending them to their deaths. But as more reports came in from the battle, it became clear that doing nothing would result in the complete destruction of the Zephyrian colony. Chancellor Vexera's crystalline form shifted through several colors as she processed the decision. Finally, she settled on a deep orange, the color of determined resolve. Ambassador Chun, she said formally, the Federation hereby requests that Earth provide military assistance to the Zephyrian colony world. Do you accept this mission? Sarah stood up straight, her small human frame somehow seeming much larger in that moment. Chancellor, the United Earth Space Force accepts this mission. We'll deploy immediately. But Ambassador, called out General Throckmore, his voice carrying genuine concern despite his earlier skepticism. What if you're wrong? What if human unpredictability isn't enough? Your entire fleet could be destroyed. Sarah Chun looked directly at the massive Ursinian general, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of human history. Every desperate last stand, every impossible victory, every moment when her species had refused to give up even when all logic said they should. General, there's something you need to understand about humans. We don't just think outside the box. We blow up the box, bury the pieces, and then pretend the box never existed in the first place. These attackers think they're unpredictable. They're about to learn what real chaos looks like. As the communication ended and the The Federation representatives began making hasty preparations. None of them could have imagined what was already happening in Earth's solar system. Admiral Marcus Torres, commander of the United Earth Space Force, had been monitoring the Federation communications. The moment he heard about the crisis, he had begun preparations that no conventional military mind could have conceived. The human fleet that would soon jump toward Kepler 442b wasn't just a collection of warships. It was something that had never existed before in the galaxy's long history of conflict, a force specifically designed to turn unpredictability into an art form. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, an enemy that thought it had mastered the art of chaos was about to discover that when it came to controlled madness, they had just challenged the undisputed masters. #stories spoke of monsters called humans. And then one smiled at me. Zara had heard the stories all her life. Every child in the Cathani Empire knew them. Stories of the monsters that came from the third planet of a small yellow star. Stories of creatures so violent that they killed their own kind for sport. Stories of beings so cruel that they kept other species as pets and food. The humans were the nightmare that parents used to keep children in line. Behave, or the humans will come for you, her mother used to say when Zara wouldn't eat her nutrient paste. They eat anything that moves. The stories painted humans as towering beasts with pale skin that burned easily, strange fur only on the tops of their heads, and teeth designed for tearing flesh. They were said to be so aggressive that they fought wars that lasted for years, destroying entire worlds just to prove who was stronger. The Galactic Council had marked Earth as a forbidden zone after the humans had supposedly wiped out 3 peaceful exploration fleets that had tried to make contact. Zara's people, the Cathani, were known throughout the galaxy for their peaceful nature. They had blue-green skin that shimmered in sunlight, large black eyes that could see in almost complete darkness, and delicate features that many species found beautiful. The Cathani had never fought a war. They solved conflicts through meditation and careful discussion. Violence was so foreign to them that they didn't even have a military. This made the stories about humans even more terrifying. How could any species be so different from the Cathani? How could beings exist that chose violence over peace? The very idea kept many young Cathani awake at night, trembling under their sleeping furs. As Zara grew older, she began to work as a translator for the Galactic Trade Council. Her job took her to many different worlds, where she met species of all kinds. There were the tall, elegant Verum with their crystal-like skin, the small, fuzzy Puck who giggled constantly and traded in rare metals, the massive Throgons who looked scary but were actually gentle giants who loved poetry. Each species had their own culture, their own way of living, their own beliefs about right and wrong. But none of them spoke of humans with anything but fear. The Verum told stories of human ships that appeared without warning, weapons blazing. The Puck whispered about human traders who cheated everyone they met. The Throgon spoke in hushed tones about human warriors who could tear through armor with their bare hands. Every species had a different story, but they all agreed on one thing. Humans were monsters. It was during a routine trade mission to Station Omega 7 that Zara's world changed forever. Station Omega 7 was a massive trading post that floated in the space between 3 different star systems. Ships from dozens of species came there to buy and sell goods. It was neutral territory, protected by ancient treaties that prevented any single species from claiming it. Zara was there to help the Cathani delegation negotiate a deal for rare crystals that powered their healing machines. The crystals came from deep inside gas giant planets, and only a few species knew how to mine them safely. The negotiations had been going on for days, and Zara was getting tired of translating the same arguments over and over again. That's when the alarms started blaring. "Attention, all station residents," came the voice over the communication system. "This is Station Commander Vex. We have an unidentified ship approaching from the Terran sector. All species are advised to report to their designated safe zones immediately." This is not a drill. The Terran sector, that was where Earth was located. Zara felt her blood turn cold as she realized what this meant. A human ship was coming to the station. Panic spread through the station like wildfire. Species that had been calmly conducting business moments before suddenly began running in every direction. The graceful Verum moved with surprising speed as they headed for their ships. The Pox squeaked in terror as they tried to gather their trade goods. Even the massive Throgons looked nervous as they stomped toward the exits. "Come on," Zara called her supervisor, Kethmar. "We need to get to the Cathani-safe zone immediately." But Zara found herself frozen in place. All her life, she had heard stories about humans. All her life, she had been told to fear them. But she had never actually seen one. Part of her was terrified, just like everyone else. But another part of her was curious. What did these monsters actually look like? Were they really as terrible as everyone said? "Zara," Kethmar called again. "What are you doing? We need to leave now." "I want to see," Zara said quietly. "See what? The humans? Are you insane? They'll kill you just for looking at them." "But what if the stories are wrong?" Zara asked. "What if they're not really monsters?" Kethmar stared at her with his large black eyes wide with shock. "Wrong? Zara, every species in the galaxy tells the same stories about humans. They can't all be wrong. But every species used to think the Throgons were monsters too," Zara pointed out. "Remember the old stories? About how they would crush anyone who came near their worlds. But when we actually met them, we found out they were poets who were just trying to protect their families." "That's different," Kethmar insisted. "The Throgons never actually hurt anyone. The humans have destroyed entire fleets." "According to stories," Zara said. "But has anyone actually talked to the survivors? Has anyone asked for proof?" Kethmar grabbed her arm gently. "Zara, this is not the time for one of your philosophical discussions. We need to leave. Now." But Zara pulled away. "You go ahead. I'll catch up. I'm not leaving you here." "Then, stay if you want," Zara said. "But I'm going to see what a real human looks like." Before Kethmar could stop her, Zara ran toward the main docking bay. Behind her, she could hear him calling her name, but she didn't turn back. She had to know the truth. The corridors of the station were chaos. Emergency lights flashed red as automated voices repeated warnings in dozens of different languages. Most of the shops had closed their metal shutters, and their owners had fled to whatever safety they could find. Zara had to dodge around panicking aliens and avoid getting trampled by larger species as they ran for the exits. When she reached the main docking bay, she found it almost empty. Only a few maintenance workers were left, and they were running around frantically, trying to prepare for whatever was coming. Zara hid behind a stack of cargo containers and waited. Through the massive transparent aluminum windows of the docking bay, she could see stars twinkling in the darkness of space. At first, everything looked normal. Then, slowly, a shape began to appear in the distance. It was a ship, but unlike any ship Zara had ever seen before. Most alien ships were designed for beauty as much as function. Cathani ships looked like graceful sea creatures swimming through space. Verum ships were crystal cathedrals that caught and reflected starlight. Throgon ships were massive and sturdy, like flying fortresses made of stone. But the human ship was different. It was sleek and angular, painted in shades of gray and black. There were no decorations, no artistic elements. It looked like it had been designed for only one purpose: to be as efficient as possible. Weapon ports were visible along its hull, and its engines glowed with a bright blue light that hurt to look at directly. As the ship grew closer, Zara could make out details. It was smaller than she had expected. The stories always described human ships as massive dreadnoughts that could destroy planets. This ship was maybe twice the size of a typical Cathani transport. It looked dangerous, but not world-ending dangerous. The ship moved with smooth precision as it approached one of the empty docking ports. There was no wasted motion, no showing off. It simply moved from point A to point B in the most direct way possible. Zara found herself impressed despite her fear. The docking process was quick and efficient. Magnetic clamps engaged with solid thunks that echoed through the bay. Atmospheric seals hissed, as they connected. Status lights changed from red to green, indicating that the connection was secure. Then, nothing happened. Zara waited, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone on the station could hear it. She expected the airlock to explode open with humans pouring out, weapons in hand, ready to kill everything that moved. That's what the story said would happen. But the airlock door remained closed. Minutes passed, then more minutes. Zara began to wonder if maybe the ship was empty. Maybe it was just a ghost ship drifting through space with no crew. Then, the airlock door opened with a quiet hiss. A figure stepped out, and Zara got her first look at a real, living human. It was smaller than she had expected. The stories described humans as giants, but this one was only slightly taller than an average Chthoni. Its skin was a light brown color, not the pale white or angry red that the stories described. Its hair was dark and cut short, and its clothing was simple and practical, some kind of dark blue uniform with various patches and symbols on it. But the most surprising thing was its face. Instead of the snarling, violent expression that Zara had expected, the human looked calm, almost peaceful. Its eyes moved slowly around the docking bay, taking in details with what looked like professional interest rather than aggressive intent. The human carried what was obviously some kind of weapon, but it remained in a holster at its side. Its hands were empty and relaxed. It moved slowly and carefully, as if it was trying not to startle anyone. More humans emerged from the ship. Zara counted 6 of them in total. They were all different sizes and colors, which surprised her. The stories always described humans as if they were all identical. But these humans varied as much as any group of Chthoni might. One was tall and pale with bright red hair. Another was short and dark with intricate patterns shaved into his hair. A third had skin so dark it was almost purple, with scars on her arms that spoke of old battles. They all wore the same type of uniform, but each had personal touches that made them unique. The first human, the one who had emerged from the ship, began walking slowly toward the center of the docking bay. As it moved, it reached up to its uniform and pressed something. Suddenly, its voice echoed through the bay, amplified by hidden speakers. "Hello," the human said, and Zara was shocked to realize that she could understand it. The human was speaking in Galactic Standard, the common language used for trade and diplomacy. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Earth Ship Harmony. I know our arrival has caused alarm, and I apologize for that. We are not here to cause trouble. We are here to talk." The human's voice was calm and steady. There was no anger in it, no threats, no demands. It sounded almost gentle. "I know that many species fear humans," the voice continued. "I know that stories are told about us throughout the galaxy. I'm here to tell you that many of those stories are not true. We are not the monsters you have been told we are." Zara felt her world shifting around her. This was not what she had expected at all. "I'm going to remain here in this docking bay," Commander Chin continued. "I will not move closer to the station proper. I will not attempt to enter your safe zones. My crew will remain with our ship. If anyone wishes to speak with us, you are welcome to approach. We have translation devices, and we can communicate in most galactic languages." The human then did something that shocked Zara to her core. It sat down on the floor of the docking bay, cross-legged, with its hands resting openly on its knees. It looked like a meditation pose that Chthoni children learn in school. "We will wait here for as long as necessary," Commander Chin said. "If no one wishes to speak with us, we will leave peacefully. We have no desire to force our presence on anyone." And then the human closed its eyes and waited. Zara stared in amazement. This was nothing like the stories. Nothing at all. The human looked peaceful, patient, and somehow sad. It didn't look like a monster. It looked like someone who was tired of being afraid and wanted others to stop being afraid too. Hours passed. The human never moved from its sitting position. Its crew remained by their ship, also sitting quietly. They didn't talk much among themselves. They just waited. Slowly, very slowly, other beings began to appear in the docking bay. At first, It was just maintenance workers who had to return to their jobs. They gave the humans a wide berth and watched them nervously as they worked. But when nothing bad happened, they began to relax slightly. Then came the security officers, heavily armed and wearing full protective gear. They positioned themselves around the docking bay, weapons ready, but not aimed directly at the humans. The humans acknowledged them with small nods, but made no threatening moves. Finally, Station Commander Vex himself appeared. He was a Throgon, massive and imposing with rocky skin and eyes like glowing coals. He approached slowly, each step making the floor vibrate slightly. Commander Chen opened her eyes and looked up at the Throgon. Slowly, carefully she stood up. Even standing, she barely came up to the Throgon's chest. "Commander Vex," she said, somehow knowing his name. "Thank you for allowing us to dock. I know this was not an easy decision." Vex stared down at her with his glowing eyes. "Human," he rumbled in his deep voice. "Why have you come here?" "To talk," Chen replied simply. "To try to end the fear and misunderstanding between our species and yours." "You speak of misunderstanding," Vex said. "But the stories about your kind are known throughout the galaxy. Are you saying they are all lies?" Chun was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, there was sadness in her voice. "Not all lies," she said. "Some of them are true. My species has done terrible things. We have fought wars. We have hurt people. We have made mistakes that we will spend the rest of our existence trying to make up for." She paused and looked around the docking bay, taking in all the beings who had gathered to watch. "But we have also done good things," she continued. "We have saved lives. We have explored the unknown to make it safe for others. We have sacrificed ourselves to protect people we have never met. We are not monsters, Commander Vex. We are not angels either. We are just complicated." Vex was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," Chen said, and Zara could hear the truth in her voice. "We want to give you something. Information. Our side of the story. The chance to judge us based on who we are now, not just on who we used to be. And if we judge you to be monsters after all?" Vex asked. Chun smiled then, and it was the first time Zara had seen a human smile. It was not the cruel, predatory expression she had expected. It was warm and genuine and somehow hopeful. "Then, we will respect that judgment," Chen said, "and we will leave you in peace." Zara felt something crack inside her chest. She had been hiding behind the cargo containers for hours, listening to everything that was said. This human was nothing like the stories, nothing like the monsters she had been taught to fear. Without thinking, without planning, Zara stepped out from behind the containers. Every eye in the docking bay turned toward her. The security officers tensed, ready to protect her if the humans attacked. Commander Vex rumbled a warning. Her supervisor, Kethmar, who had apparently been watching from somewhere else, called out her name in alarm. But Zara only had eyes for Commander Chen. The human was looking at her with curiosity and what looked like gentle concern. There was no anger, no aggression, no desire to hurt. Slowly, carefully, Zara walked toward the human. With each step, the voices around her grew more urgent, more afraid. People were telling her to stop, to come back, to run away. But she didn't stop. When she was close enough to touch the human, she stopped. They looked at each other for a long moment. Zara could see her own reflection in the human's dark eyes. She could see intelligence there, and kindness, and something that looked very much like hope. "Hello," Commander Chen said quietly, speaking directly to Zara in perfect Cathani. "My name is Sarah. What's yours?" "Zara," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. And then Commander Chen smiled at her. It was a real smile, warm and genuine and completely without malice. It was the smile of someone meeting a new friend, someone happy to make a connection with another living being. It was the smile of someone who had been lonely and was grateful to find that they were not alone. In that moment, Zara knew that everything she had been taught was wrong. This was not a monster. This was just a person trying to build bridges across the vast emptiness of space. The stories had lied. The humans were not monsters. They were just like everyone else. The first sign that something had changed came 12 hours later when emergency broadcasts began flooding subspace communications across the sector. The notorious Sindek pirate fleet, which had terrorized shipping lanes for over 2 years, had been completely destroyed in a coordinated strike that lasted less than 6 hours. Zarathine sat in the communication center, watching the reports with growing amazement. 7 pirate strongholds simultaneously hit by precision attacks. 12 major vessels eliminated without a single distress signal being sent. The most heavily defended pirate base in the sector reduced to debris in what witnesses described as a perfectly orchestrated assault. How is this possible? Ambassador Threxaniel demanded, his silver skin flickering with agitated orange patterns. The combined fleet has been trying to locate these pirates for years. How did the humans find them all at once? Captain Rodriguez of the human naval contingent was fielding questions from a dozen different species representatives. I'm afraid I don't have complete details yet, Ambassador. The operation was conducted by a specialized task force. What kind of task force? Threxaniel pressed. Captain Rodriguez glanced briefly at Marcus, who sat quietly in the back of the room. A very effective one. Zarathine noticed the exchange and felt something cold settle in her stomach. She looked at her husband, but his expression remained neutral, almost bored. Yet there was something in his posture, a subtle alertness that she was beginning to recognize. Over the following days, more details emerged through intelligence channels and survivor accounts. The attacks had been carried out with surgical precision by ships that appeared on no official registry. The pirate vessels had been disabled first, their crews evacuated to life pods, and then the ships themselves methodically destroyed. The strongholds had been cleared with minimal casualties among captured civilians, while the pirates themselves had simply vanished. It was like they knew everything about us. One captured pirate admitted during interrogation footage that somehow made its way to the diplomatic vessel. They knew our schedules, our codes, our defenses. They knew things that only someone on the inside could have known. That evening, Zarathine found Marcus in their quarters, reading what appeared to be a routine diplomatic brief. She had been watching him carefully for days, looking for any sign that he was involved in the sudden resolution of their crisis. "Marcus," she said, settling beside him on their shared sleeping platform, "were you involved in the pirate raids?" "Which pirate raids?" he asked without looking up from his reading. "The attacks that destroyed the Sindek fleet." Now he did look at her, with those calm brown eyes that she was beginning to suspect saw much more than they revealed. "Why would you think that?" "Because the timing was perfect. Because you knew it was going to happen before it did. Because—" She paused, struggling to articulate the feeling that had been growing stronger each day. "Because there's something about you that you're not telling me." Marcus set aside his reader and turned to face her fully. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, and Zarathine felt like she was seeing her husband clearly for the first time. "What do you know about human military structure?" he asked finally. "The basics. You have regular forces, specialized units, intelligence services, and above those, you have units that don't officially exist. Groups that handle problems too sensitive for conventional military response." His voice was still gentle, but there was steel underneath it now. "I told you I was a diplomatic attaché. I never said that was my only job." Zarathine felt her patterns shift to the pale blue of shock. "You're a spy." "I'm a problem solver," Marcus corrected. "When conventional diplomacy fails, and military action would cause more problems than it solves, people like me find alternative solutions." "People like you?" Marcus stood and moved to their private communication console, inputting a code that Zarathine had never seen him use. The display activated, showing a file marked with security classifications she didn't recognize. Her 4 eyes tracked across the information, trying to process what she was seeing. Marcus Chun, Colonel, Human Intelligence Special Operations. Specialized in deep cover infiltration and asset elimination. 47 confirmed solo operations. 0 mission failures. The man she had married, the gentle diplomat who brought her flowers and listened patiently to her concerns about trade regulations, was one of Earth's most dangerous operatives. The Sindak pirates, she whispered, have been under surveillance for months. We knew their locations, their capabilities, their plans. We were waiting for the right moment to move. Marcus closed the file and turned back to her. Your marriage to me was never about some ordinary diplomatic attaché. Your father specifically requested Earth's best operative. He wanted to ensure his daughter was protected, and he wanted to send a message about human capabilities. My father knew. Your father is a very intelligent leader. He understood that the Veltar Empire needed allies who could do more than just trade and shake hands at diplomatic functions. The galaxy is more dangerous than most people realize, and conventional military responses aren't always possible. Zaradine felt the room spinning around her. Everything she thought she understood about their relationship, about Marcus himself, had been built on incomplete information. Was any of it real? Our marriage, your feelings. Marcus moved to sit beside her again, taking her hands in his. This time, the gentle touch felt different, charged with the knowledge of what those hands were capable of. Every moment has been real, he said, and she could hear absolute sincerity in his voice. I volunteered for this assignment, Zura. When the proposal came through official channels, I requested to be considered. Not because I was ordered to, but because I wanted to meet the princess who was brave enough to leave everything she knew to build something better. You volunteer to marry me? I volunteer for the chance to marry you. The difference matters. His brown eyes held hers steadily. The operation against the pirates was necessary regardless of our marriage. But doing it to protect you, to secure our future together, that gave it a different meaning for me. Ambassador Threxenel's harsh laughter echoed from the corridor outside their quarters, and Zaradine realized he was probably discussing his report with his staff. The report that would recommend ending the human alliance because Earth couldn't protect its partners. Threxenel still plans to recommend terminating our alliance, she said. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since she had known him, the expression carried a predatory edge that made her shiver. Ambassador Threxenel is about to receive some very interesting intelligence briefings. Information that will help him understand exactly what kind of protection the human alliance provides. Looking at her husband now, seeing the lethal competence hidden behind his gentle demeanor, Zaradine finally understood what she had sensed but couldn't identify. Marcus Chin wasn't just kind and patient and intelligent. He was dangerous in ways that most beings couldn't comprehend, and he had chosen to use that danger to protect her and their shared future. The crisis escalated faster than anyone had anticipated. Within hours of Secretary Vraltine's communication, reports began flooding in from across the sector. Hegemony forces weren't just moving toward human space. They were actively blockading Veltar trade routes, demanding that Emperor Zarthal dissolve the alliance immediately or face complete economic isolation. Zaradine found herself in a unique position of being both a diplomatic asset and a potential target. If the hegemony could capture or eliminate her, they would strike a devastating blow against both the alliance and her father's political standing. We need to get you to safety, Marcus said, his operational persona now fully engaged. Their quarters had been transformed into a command center, with tactical displays showing fleet movements and threat assessments across 3-star systems. I'm not running away, Zaradine replied firmly. My people need to see that their princess doesn't abandon her allies when things become difficult. Your people need their princess alive. Marcus's voice carried an edge she had never heard before. The hegemony isn't planning to capture you for political leverage, Zura. They're planning to make an example. How do you know that? Marcus activated a recording that made her blood freeze. Hegemony Chancellor Vrexmol's voice filled their quarters, speaking to what was obviously a closed council session. The alien princess and her pet human represent everything wrong with current galactic politics. Their elimination would send a clear message about the consequences of destabilizing alliances. Where did you get this? Zaradine whispered. Human intelligence has been monitoring hegemony communications for months. We knew they were planning something, but the timing caught us off guard. Marcus was inputting commands faster than she could follow. I'm calling in emergency protocols. What kind of protocols? The kind that officially don't exist. Over the next 6 hours, Zarathine watched her gentle husband coordinate a response that redefined her understanding of human capabilities. Ships that didn't appear on any registry began reporting readiness status. Intelligence assets embedded throughout the hegemony started transmitting real-time updates on military positions and political maneuvering. Most impressively, Marcus somehow arranged for Emperor Zarthal to receive detailed intelligence about hegemony war plans before the hegemony's own field commanders had been briefed. "How many operatives like you does Earth actually have?" she asked as reports continued streaming in from sources across the galaxy. "Enough to make threatening humanity a very expensive mistake," Marcus replied without looking up from his displays. "But this isn't just about protecting Earth anymore, Zura. This is about protecting our alliance, our future, and you specifically." The first sign that the hegemony had underestimated human capabilities came when Chancellor Vrexmol's private yacht, supposedly in a secure system guarded by an entire battle group, suffered a catastrophic communications failure that broadcast his private war plans across every diplomatic channel in the sector. The transmission included detailed evidence of planned atrocities against civilian populations and illegal weapons testing on captured prisoners. "Technical malfunction," Marcus said blandly when Ambassador Threxel demanded an explanation for how such classified information could have been compromised. "A very convenient malfunction," Threxel observed. "Human technology can be unpredictable." The second sign came when 3 separate hegemony commanders found their personal files leaked to their own subordinates, revealing years of corruption, war profiteering, and illegal experimentation. The leaks caused internal revolts that effectively neutralized half of the force moving against human space. "More technical difficulties?" Zarathine asked, finding herself simultaneously impressed and slightly terrified by the scope of her husband's capabilities. "Information systems are complex things," Marcus said with that mild expression that she now knew meant he was being extremely dangerous. "Sometimes data ends up in unexpected places." The final demonstration of human capabilities came when the remaining hegemony battle group found their approach to Earth's outer colonies blocked by what appeared to be empty space. Sensors showed nothing, but when the lead ships tried to advance, they collided with invisible barriers that held them completely motionless. "Stealth defense platforms," Marcus explained to the emergency session that included representatives from 6 different species. "Deployed months ago, just in case someone decided to test human resolve." "How many?" Admiral Krextull from the Galactic Defense Consortium asked, his voice tight with concern. "Classified," Marcus replied, "but enough to protect everything we consider important." Chancellor Vrexmol's attempted invasion collapsed entirely when his remaining forces discovered that their own weapons systems had been compromised. Every ship in the hegemony fleet found their targeting computers mysteriously malfunctioning, their communications filled with feedback loops, and their navigation systems displaying humorous messages in perfect hegemony dialect. "Did you do all of this?" Zarathine asked that evening as news reports confirmed the complete failure of the hegemony's military action. "I coordinated some of it," Marcus admitted, "but this was a team effort. Earth has been preparing for this kind of challenge for decades. We just never had a reason to demonstrate our full capabilities before, because no one had threatened something that mattered to you personally." Marcus turned to face her, and she saw in his brown eyes the same warmth and love that had drawn her to him from their first meeting. But now she also saw the steel underneath, the absolute determination that made him one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. "You matter to me, Zura. Our alliance matters. The future we're building together matters." He took her hands in his, and she marveled at how those gentle fingers had just orchestrated the defeat of one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. "I told you once that humans are adaptable. What I didn't mention is that we're also very, very protective of the people we love. 6 months later, as Zarathine stood before the Galactic Council to formalize the expanded Earth-Veltar alliance, she reflected on how much her life had changed. The hegemony had been forced to pay massive reparations for their unprovoked aggression. Chancellor Vrexmol had been removed from power by his own people, and 36 species had requested similar protective agreements with Earth. Marcus stood beside her during the ceremony, looking exactly like the mild-mannered diplomatic attaché he had pretended to be when they first met. But now she knew the truth. Behind those warm brown eyes lay the mind of someone who could protect entire civilizations, and he had chosen to use that incredible capability to protect her and the future they were building together. "Do you regret learning the truth about me?" Marcus asked quietly as they watched the formal signing of documents that would reshape galactic politics. Zarathine looked at her husband, spy, protector, and the most dangerous man in several star systems, and smiled. "I regret that it took me 3 months to realize that the most interesting person in the galaxy had married me." "The most interesting person in the galaxy is standing right next to me," Marcus replied, squeezing her hand. "I'm just very good at keeping her safe." As diplomatic representatives from across the galaxy applauded the historic alliance, Zarathine finally understood what it truly meant to be married to a human. They might look harmless and gentle, but when something they loved was threatened, they became the most formidable force in the universe. And she was very grateful to be on there. The silence that followed Zara's introduction stretched across the docking bay like a held breath. Every being present seemed frozen in time, waiting to see what would happen next. The security officers kept their weapons ready, but not aimed. Commander Vex stood like a mountain of stone, his glowing eyes fixed on the small scene playing out before him. Commander Sarah Chun continued to smile at Zara, but she made no move to come closer. Her hands remained visible and relaxed at her sides. She seemed to understand that this moment was fragile, that one wrong move could shatter whatever trust was beginning to form. "It's nice to meet you, Zara," Sarah said, still speaking in flawless Cathani. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you here as a representative of your people, or are you here because you were curious about us?" Zara felt heat rise in her cheeks. The truthful answer was embarrassing. I was curious," she admitted. "I've heard stories about humans my whole life, but I've never seen one before. I wanted to know if the stories were true." "And what do you think now?" Sarah asked gently. "I think," Zara said slowly, "that the stories might be more complicated than I thought." Sarah's smile widened slightly. "That's very wise of you. Stories have a way of changing as they're told and retold. Sometimes they end up very different from what actually happened." From somewhere behind them, Kethmar called out, "Zara, please step away from the human. We don't know if it's safe." Sarah turned toward the sound of his voice, though she couldn't see him from where she stood. "Your friend is worried about you," she said to Zara. "That's understandable. Would it help if I sat down again?" Without waiting for an answer, Sarah lowered herself back into the cross-legged position she had maintained for hours. Now she had to look up at Zara, which somehow made her seem less threatening, even though Zara knew intellectually that the human could probably move much faster than she could. "Is that better?" Sarah asked. Zara found herself nodding. There was something about the human's willingness to make herself smaller, to put herself in what could be seen as a vulnerable position, that spoke of genuine, peaceful intent. "Can I ask you something?" Zara said, surprising herself with her boldness. "Of course. The stories say that humans are always fighting, that you have wars all the time and kill each other for no reason. Is that true?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, and sadness flickered across her features. "We do fight sometimes," she said eventually. "More than we should. More than I wish we did. But not for no reason and not all the time. Most humans spend most of their lives in peace, trying to take care of their families and make their communities better. But you do have wars." "We do," Sarah admitted, "though fewer than we used to. We're learning, slowly, that fighting usually makes problems worse instead of better. That's part of why I'm here, actually, to try to solve problems with words instead of weapons. Before Zara could ask another question, Commander Vex's deep voice rumbled across the docking bay. "Human Chun," he said, "you spoke of wanting to share your side of the story. What story, specifically?" Sarah looked up at the massive Throgon. "There are many stories, Commander, but I suspect you're referring to the incident with the hegemony exploration fleets." A ripple of tension ran through the gathered crowd. The destruction of 3 hegemony fleets was one of the most infamous stories told about humans. It was often used as proof of their violent nature. 3 peaceful exploration vessels, Vex said, his voice carrying the weight of old anger. Destroyed without warning. No survivors. No communication attempts. Just death. Sarah nodded slowly. Yes, 3 ships were destroyed. And you're right that there were no survivors. But the rest of the story, the rest is not quite accurate. Are you claiming they were not peaceful? Asked a new voice. Zara turned to see that a Verum had approached, her crystal-like skin catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns on the walls. The records clearly show they were exploration vessels, not military ships. You're absolutely right, Sarah said. They were exploration vessels, and the crews probably thought they were on a peaceful mission. But the ships carried something else. Sarah reached slowly into her uniform and withdrew a small device. Several security officers tensed, but she held it carefully, obviously trying to show that it wasn't a weapon. "This is a data projector," she said. "With your permission, Commander Vex, I'd like to show you what our sensors detected when those ships entered our solar system." Vex considered for a moment, then nodded. "Proceed." Sarah activated the device, and a 3-dimensional image appeared in the air above it. It showed what was clearly meant to be Earth's solar system, with the sun at the center and planets orbiting around it. 3 ships appeared at the edge of the image, moving slowly toward the inner planets. "This is what happened from our perspective," Sarah said. 3 ships appeared in our system. They did not respond to our communication attempts. They continued moving toward our populated worlds despite our request for them to identify themselves. The image shifted, zooming in on the ships. Zara could see details now that made her gasp. The ships were covered in what looked like weapon ports. As they got closer, our sensors detected these, Sarah continued, highlighting the weapons with pulses of red light. High-energy plasma cannons, quantum torpedo launchers, point defense systems. These ships carried enough firepower to destroy cities. But they were exploration vessels, the Verum protested. "Yes," Sarah agreed. "But they were exploration vessels built by the Makari hegemony. And the hegemony had a very specific way of exploring." She touched the projector again, and new images appeared. These showed planets that Zara didn't recognize, but the scenes were unmistakable. Cities in ruins, forests burned to ash, oceans polluted and lifeless. The Makari hegemony explored by conquering, Sarah said quietly. They would find new worlds with their exploration fleets, then return with colony ships to claim them. If anyone was already living there, they were enslaved or killed. In the 50 years before they reached our system, the hegemony had destroyed 17 different civilizations. The docking bay was completely silent now. Zara felt sick as she looked at the images of destroyed worlds. "We didn't know that their crews thought they were on a peaceful mission," Sarah continued. "All we knew was that 3 heavily armed ships belonging to a known aggressive empire had entered our space, and were refusing to communicate. We tried for hours to make contact. We sent messages in every language we knew. We broadcast mathematical sequences to show that we were intelligent. We even tried sending music. New images appeared, showing human ships approaching the hegemony vessels. The human ships were smaller, less obviously armed. Finally, when the hegemony ships were only hours away from our colonies, we sent a small fleet to intercept them. Our intention was to force them to stop and talk. But when our ships got close, the image showed what happened next. The hegemony ships opened fire immediately, without warning, targeting the human vessels with overwhelming firepower. They destroyed 2 of our ships in the first volley, Sarah said, and Zara could hear old pain in her voice. Killed 300 people in a matter of seconds. That's when we realized that communication wasn't going to work. The rest of the battle played out in the hologram. The human ships, smaller but more maneuverable, fought desperately against the larger hegemony vessels. It was clear that the humans were outgunned, but they fought with a coordination and determination that gradually turned the tide. We didn't want to destroy them, Sarah said, as the last hegemony ship exploded in the projection. We would have preferred to capture them, to take prisoners, to learn why they had come. But they wouldn't surrender. They fought to the last ship, and when their final vessel was crippled, they self-destructed rather than be taken alive. The projection faded, leaving the docking bay in normal lighting again. The silence stretched on as everyone processed what they had seen. "You're saying the hegemony attacked first," Commander Vex said eventually. "Yes, but the records show that human ships were found in the debris field. That proves you were the aggressors." Sarah nodded sadly. "Human ships were found there, yes. The wreckage of the 2 vessels they destroyed in their opening attack. Those ships contained the bodies of 300 humans who died, trying to prevent what they thought was going to be an invasion of their homeworld. But the hegemony reported it differently," the Verum said, confusion clear in her musical voice. "The hegemony never told anyone what really happened," Sarah replied. "How could they? If they admitted that their exploration fleets were actually invasion forces, other species might have stopped them before they could conquer more worlds. So they created a different story. They said their peaceful explorers had been massacred by savage humans. They used our defense of our home as proof that we were monsters." Zara felt pieces clicking together in her mind. "That's why everyone fears humans," she said. "Because the hegemony spread the story that you attacked first." "Partly, yes," Sarah confirmed. "But there were other incidents too. Times when humans did make mistakes, when we acted aggressively, when we should have tried to talk. We're not perfect, Zara. We never claimed to be. But we're not the monsters the stories make us out to be, either. Why haven't you told this story before?" Commander Vex asked. "Why let the galaxy believe lies about you?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was tired. "Because for a long time, it was easier to let people fear us than to risk them attacking us. If everyone thought we were dangerous, they would leave us alone. It was a kind of protection. But that's changed?" the Verum asked. "Yes," Sarah said, and her voice grew stronger. "We realized that living in isolation, surrounded by fear and mistrust, wasn't really living at all. We want to be part of the galactic community. We want to trade, to learn, to share knowledge and culture. We want to explore the universe together instead of hiding from each other." She looked around at the gathered beings, making eye contact with each of them in turn. "That's why I'm here," she said. "That's why my crew and I've spent the last 5 years visiting stations like this one, telling our story to anyone willing to listen. We're trying to build bridges. We're trying to replace fear with understanding. And if we still don't trust you?" Vex asked. Sarah's smile returned, sad but genuine. "Then we'll respect that. We won't force ourselves on anyone. But we'll keep trying because we believe that understanding is always better than fear." From the back of the crowd, Kethmar finally spoke up. "Zara," he called, "we need to go. The negotiations are resuming, and they need a translator." Zara looked back toward her supervisor, then at Sarah. The human was watching her with patient eyes, making no attempt to influence her decision. "I have to go," Zara said finally. "Of course," Sarah replied. "Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. It means more than you know. Will you still be here later?" Zara asked, surprising herself again. "For a while, yes. As long as Commander Vex allows it." Zara nodded and began to walk away. But after a few steps, she stopped and looked back. "Sarah," she said. "Yes. I'm glad you came here. I'm glad I got to meet you." Sarah's smile blazed brighter than the station's lights. "I'm glad too, Zara. Very glad." As Zara walked away to rejoin her delegation, she could feel the weight of what had just happened settling around her. Everything she had believed about humans had been shaken to its core. The stories that had frightened her since childhood were based on lies, and misunderstandings. But more than that, she had seen something in Sarah Chan that she hadn't expected to find. Hope. The human genuinely believed that understanding was possible, that fear could be replaced with friendship. And somehow, that hope was beginning to take root in Zara's own heart. Behind her, she could hear more beings approaching Sarah, asking questions, demanding proof, challenging her story. But Sarah answered each question patiently, honestly, never losing her temper or her smile. Maybe, Zara thought as she walked toward the conference room where the crystal negotiations were taking place, maybe the galaxy was about to change. Maybe the age of fear was ending, and something better was about to begin. She just hoped she would be brave enough to be part of it. The first volley of hegemony plasma fire lit up space like deadly fireworks. Zara gripped her station as the human ship twisted and rolled, evading the incoming energy blast with movements that seemed impossible for something so large. The artificial gravity system struggled to keep up with the violent maneuvers, and Zara's stomach lurched with each sudden change of direction. Evasive pattern delta, Sarah called out calmly, as if they were running a simple training exercise instead of fighting for their lives. Keep us between the hegemony ships and the station. Don't let them get a clear approach vector to the civilian evacuation. They're trying to surround us, Murphy reported, her hands dancing over the navigation controls. 3 ships moving to port, 4 to starboard, 5 coming straight at us. Let them, Torres said from her weapons station. The more spread out they get, the harder it will be for them to coordinate. Zara listened to the hegemony communications, translating frantically. They're confused, she called out. They expected you to either run away or attack directly. Your evasion patterns don't match any of their tactical databases. Good, Sarah replied. The unknown is always an advantage. The hegemony ships fired again, this time in a coordinated pattern that should have caught the human vessel no matter which direction it moved. But somehow, Murphy threaded the ship through gaps in the energy web that seemed too small to exist. How are you doing that? Zara gasped, watching the tactical display as they somehow avoided destruction by meters. Human ships are built different, Murphy called back, sweat beading on her forehead as she fought the controls. We don't rely on shields as much as everyone else. We're faster, more maneuverable. We learned to build ships that could run and dodge because we usually fought enemies that were bigger than us. Speaking of running and dodging, Torres said they're getting frustrated. Commander, they're charging heavy weapons. How heavy? Sarah asked. Ship killers, Torres replied grimly. The kind that can crack a station's hull. Sarah's expression darkened. We can't let them use those anywhere near Omega 7. Murphy, take us deeper into the asteroid field. Make them follow us. Into the asteroids? Zara asked, her voice rising in panic. But the gravitational fields, the collision risks, are less dangerous than letting them get a clear shot at the station, Sarah finished. Murphy sent the ship diving toward the nearby asteroid field that had been providing raw materials for the station's construction. The massive rocks tumbled slowly through space, some the size of small moons, others no bigger than buildings. The gravitational interactions between them created pockets of twisted space-time that could tear apart any ship that wasn't careful. The hegemony fleet followed, but their larger, less maneuverable ships struggled to navigate the field. 2 of them collided with smaller asteroids, their shields sparking and overloading. One had to fall back for emergency repairs. They're down to 10 ships, Torres reported with satisfaction. Enemy communications are getting heated, Zara added, listening to the intercepted transmissions. Their fleet commander is angry that a single human ship is making them look incompetent. Let them get angry, Sarah said. Angry people make mistakes. As if summoned by her words, one of the hegemony ships broke formation and charged straight at them, firing wildly. Murphy waited until the last possible moment, then rolled the ship around a massive asteroid, using its gravity to slingshot them away at incredible speed. The hegemony ship, moving too fast to change course, slammed into the asteroid, and exploded in a brilliant flash of light. "Make that 9 ships," Torres said. "Station Omega, 7 to Harmony." Commander Vex's voice came over the communication system. "Evacuation is 95% complete. Hold your position for 5 more minutes." "We'll hold as long as we need to," Sarah replied. But even as she spoke, the remaining hegemony ships were coordinating a new attack. They had learned from their mistakes and were now moving in tight formation, their fire concentrated and coordinated. "They're not chasing us anymore," Murphy observed. "They're trying to hurt us." "Into what?" Sarah asked. Zara's blood turned to ice as she listened to the enemy communications. "They're driving us toward their flagship," she said. "It's been hanging back, but it's massive, bigger than all the other ships combined." On a tactical display, a new contact appeared. It was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the human ship. Its weapons signatures were off the scale. "That's a planetary siege vessel," Torres whispered. "It's designed to crack open defended worlds." "And we just flew into its firing range," Murphy added. The flagship's weapons powered up, energy readings climbing to levels that made Zara's instruments scream warnings. At this range, with that much firepower, there was no way to dodge. "All stations, brace for impact," Sarah called out. But the killing blow never came. Instead, the massive hegemony ship suddenly lurched to one side as a series of explosions rippled along its hull. New contacts were appearing on the scanner, dozens of them, approaching from all directions. "What the hell?" Torres muttered, staring at her displays. "Commander Chun," came a new voice over the communications, speaking in the musical tones of the Verum. "This is Captain Thelos of the Verum Defense Force. We are here to assist." More voices joined in, one after another. Throgon captains announcing their arrival in voices like rolling thunder. Pock squadron leaders chattering excitedly about their new torpedo modifications. Even Cathani ships, peaceful, non-military vessels that had been hastily armed with whatever weapons their crews could find. "How many ships?" Sarah asked in amazement. Murphy checked her sensors. "I count 47 vessels. Mixed fleet, all species." "Commander, they're responding to a general distress call from the station. A distress call that mentioned you were fighting alone to protect civilian evacuations," Vex's voice added over the channel. "It seems word is spread about what humans are really like." The hegemony fleet found itself suddenly outnumbered 4-1 by ships from a dozen different species. But more importantly, they were facing something they had never encountered before, a truly unified galactic response. "Hegemony vessels," Captain Thelos announced over an open channel. "You are in violation of neutral space and have committed acts of aggression against civilian targets. Withdraw immediately or face the combined fleets of the Galactic Alliance." The hegemony commander's response was predictably defiant. "Verum scum, these waters belong to the hegemony by right of conquest. We will destroy you as we have destroyed all who oppose us." "He's calling for reinforcements," Zara reported, monitoring the enemy communications. "But they're hours away. He's trying to decide whether to fight or retreat." The decision was made for him when the newly formed fleet opened fire simultaneously. 47 ships from across the galaxy, using tactics and weapons that had never been combined before, struck the hegemony vessels with overwhelming force. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Verum crystal ships focused their energy beams with surgical precision. Throgon heavy cruisers pounded the enemy with kinetic rounds that could shatter mountains. Pock fighters swarmed around the larger vessels like angry insects, their small size making them nearly impossible to hit. And through it all, Cathani medical ships stood ready to rescue survivors from both sides when the fighting ended. The hegemony fleet, designed to overwhelm individual opponents, found itself completely outmatched by the combined tactics of species that had learned to work together. Within minutes, half their ships were disabled or destroyed. "Enemy flagship is retreating," Torres reported. "The rest of the fleet is following." "Let them go," Sarah ordered. "We've made our point." As the hegemony ships limped away toward the edge of the system, the impromptu galactic fleet began forming up around the human vessel. Zara watched in amazement as ships from species that had been suspicious of each other for generations moved in perfect coordination. "Commander Chun," Captain Thelos called over the communication channel. "That was the most insane, brave, and effective delaying action I have ever witnessed. On behalf of the Varen people, I salute you." Similar calls came in from every ship in the fleet. Throgon captains offering to share war poetry. Hawk pilots wanting to trade engine modifications. Cathani doctors asking if anyone needed medical assistance. But the call that meant the most to Zara came from Commander Vex. "Harmony, this is Station Omega 7. All civilian evacuations are complete. All station residents are safe. And we are all in your debt." Sarah was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "Commander Vex, the debt is ours. Your people fought alongside us when they had every reason to fear us instead. That's a gift we can never repay." "Perhaps," Vex replied, "we can call it even." Over the next several hours, as the emergency passed and ships began to return to the station, something unprecedented happened. Representatives from every species present requested formal meetings with the human crew. They wanted to hear the real history, to understand the truth behind the stories, to explore the possibility of formal diplomatic relations. Zara found herself busier than ever, translating conversations that would reshape galactic politics. But the conversation that meant the most to her was the quiet one she had with Sarah as the human ship prepared to finally dock at the station properly. "You were right," Zara said. "Understanding is better than fear." "We all learned that today," Sarah replied. "Your people, mine, everyone who fought together out there. We learned that the galaxy is big enough for all of us." "What happens now?" Zara asked. Sarah looked out at the mixed fleet of ships surrounding them, representatives of dozens of species working together for the first time in galactic history. "Now we build something new," she said. "We write new stories. Better stories. Stories about what we can accomplish when we work together instead of fearing each other." "And the old stories? The ones about monsters?" Sarah smiled, and once again, Zara was struck by how genuine and warm that expression was. "The old stories serve there.